The Rise of Fascism and World War II. 1902, Mussolini begins his journey. In 1902, a young man named Benito Mussolini left Italy to avoid military service. He moved to Switzerland, where he got involved in socialism. He worked with trade unions and wrote for socialist newspapers. He even called for European kings and queens to be overthrown. Because of this, Mussolini got into trouble with the Swiss police. He was arrested many times and sent back to Italy. He kept returning to Switzerland. Eventually, he went back to Italy, finished his military service, and worked as a teacher for a short time before returning to his socialist beliefs. Mussolini became well known for his speeches and writings. He spoke out against war, and when Italy took over Libya in 1910, he led protests and was arrested. But when World War I started, Mussolini changed his mind. At first, he protested against Italy joining the war, but he later believed that the war could bring the changes needed for a socialist revolution. This new idea made his fellow socialists angry, and they kicked him out of the party. Mussolini became disappointed with socialism, so he started looking for a new idea that focused on national unity instead of class struggles. He imagined bringing back the greatness of the Roman Empire, believing Italy could conquer the Mediterranean and become powerful again under a new system called fascism. Italy, after World War I. After World War I, Italy felt cheated. Even though Italy fought on the winning side, it did not get much land from the Treaty of Versailles. The economy was struggling, and governments were unstable, which made people unhappy. Mussolini promised to bring back Italy's past glory, and many people supported him. In 1922, Mussolini demanded that the king make him the prime minister. When the king asked, "You and what army?" Mussolini pointed to his supporters and said, "This army." He then took power and made himself a dictator, becoming the first fascist leader in Europe. The rise of Hitler in Germany. After losing World War I, Germany faced harsh punishments from the Treaty of Versailles. They lost land, their military was limited, and they had to pay large fines. This caused economic problems and political instability, and many Germans wanted big changes. Adolf Hitler, a World War I veteran, became popular by promising to restore Germany's pride. After a failed attempt to take over the government in 1923, Hitler continued to gain support, and in 1933, he became the leader of Germany. He quickly made himself a dictator, making Germany the second fascist country in Europe. Hitler and Mussolini had similar beliefs, and they soon became allies. At the same time, Japan was expanding its power in Asia. Japan had been isolated for a long time, but faced pressure from Western countries to open its markets. This led to conflict with China as Japan tried to gain control over Korea and other territories. The Axis powers. By the late 1930s, Germany, Italy, and Japan all wanted to expand their territories. They believed they were better than others and were hostile toward the Allies. Germany started to break the rules of the Treaty of Versailles by rebuilding its military and sending troops to the Rhineland. The Allies mostly ignored these actions. Hitler wanted to expand Germany's territory to make room for the so-called Aryan race, starting with neighboring countries. The Allies tried to keep peace by allowing Hitler to take over Austria and demand the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia. In a meeting in Munich, they agreed to his demands, hoping it would prevent a war. But soon after, Hitler took over the rest of Czechoslovakia. Mussolini also wanted to show Italy's strength. He invaded Ethiopia and occupied Albania. Meanwhile, Japan staged an incident to justify invading China, where they committed terrible acts, especially in the city of Nanking. The start of World War II. Hitler wanted to take over Poland, and the Allies warned him not to do it. To avoid fighting on two sides, Hitler made a secret deal with Stalin, agreeing to split Poland between Germany and the Soviet Union. On September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, which led Britain and France to declare war on Germany. Germany quickly defeated Poland, leading to a period called the Phony War, where neither side took major action. France and Britain prepared for war but used outdated tactics. Germany then launched a surprise attack through Belgium, using a fast and coordinated attack called Blitzkrieg. This led to the defeat of France. With France occupied, Britain was left to fight alone. Hitler tried to force Britain to surrender by bombing its cities. However, the British people, led by Winston Churchill, stood strong, and the Royal Air Force, RAF, managed to defend against the attacks, stopping Hitler's invasion plans. Conclusion. The years of World War II were filled with alliances and actions that would lead to a terrible global conflict. The ideas of leaders like Mussolini and Hitler caused great destruction and loss of life. But was Britain truly alone? Not quite. Many countries in the British Commonwealth and colonies supported Britain during the war, playing an important role, especially in Africa and Italy. On the Axis side, Germany, Italy, and Japan signed a pact to support each other. The Soviet Union also went to war against Finland, but it was harder than they expected, showing their military weakness. Eventually, the Soviets forced Finland to make peace and continued expanding by taking over the Baltic states and parts of northern Romania. In Africa, French colonies refused to join the Germans and stayed loyal to Free France. The Allies tried to take the important port of Dakar, but they failed. Seeing Hitler's success, Mussolini thought it was Italy's time to shine. He had some early success in British Somaliland, but he failed when trying to invade Egypt and Greece. Churchill called Italy the soft underbelly of Europe and supported a military campaign from the south by sending British troops to Greece. This made Hitler worried, and he convinced Hungary and Romania to join the Axis powers for protection against the Soviet Union. The Axis powers wanted to prevent other countries, especially the United States, from joining the Allies. At first, many Americans were against joining the war. President Franklin D. Roosevelt promised not to send troops to Europe unless it was absolutely necessary. However, he did provide weapons and supplies to the Allies. German U-boats started sinking many Allied supply ships in the Atlantic, including American ones. If Germany cut off Britain's supplies, the UK would face starvation. To fight the U-boats, the Allies developed better technology like radar and long-range aircraft. Eventually, British codebreakers, led by Alan Turing, managed to crack Germany's secret codes, making it easier to defend against U-boat attacks. The invasion of North Africa and the Soviet Union. In North Africa, Britain pushed Italy out of Egypt, which forced Hitler to step in. He pressured Bulgaria and Yugoslavia to let German troops pass through their lands. Bulgaria agreed to join the Axis, and Germany invaded Yugoslavia. The Germans and Italians invaded Greece, forcing the British to withdraw. German General Rommel and his forces pushed the British back in North Africa. However, the Australians held their ground in Tobruk, stopping Rommel from taking a key port. Meanwhile, Hitler launched a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. Stalin, despite warnings from Churchill and Roosevelt, was not prepared. The Soviets suffered great losses. The Germans advanced toward Moscow, but winter set in. Hitler had expected a quick victory, but the Soviets kept fighting. The Germans were not ready for the cold weather, and Stalin brought in troops from Siberia, who were used to fighting in extreme cold. This helped turn the tide against the Germans. Japan enters the war. At the same time, Japan wanted to expand in Southeast Asia, but knew they could not defeat the British and American navies directly, so they planned a surprise attack. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, destroying much of the U.S. Pacific Fleet. This led the U.S. and Britain to declare war on Japan, and soon after, Germany declared war on the U.S. Japan continued expanding, taking over many territories in the Pacific. They thought they were unstoppable, but their victories depended on speed rather than true strength. Meanwhile, in Europe, the Nazis started rounding up and persecuting minorities, leading to the horrors of the Holocaust. In many countries, brave resistance groups fought back against the Axis powers. Turning the tide, Hitler then focused on capturing the oil-rich region of the Caucasus. However, the Battle of Stalingrad became a turning point. The Soviets defended fiercely, and eventually, they surrounded the German Sixth Army, forcing them to surrender. This marked a major defeat for Hitler. Elsewhere, the Allies began gaining momentum. In North Africa, British and American forces defeated Rommel. The Americans also won a crucial victory against Japan at the Battle of Midway, weakening Japan's navy. The invasion of Italy and France. The Allies decided to invade Italy, landing in Sicily in 1943. Mussolini lost support and was removed from power. Italy began to negotiate surrender, and Hitler sent troops to defend Italy. The Allies prepared for a massive invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe. On June 6, 1944, known as D-Day, they landed in Normandy, France. Despite heavy resistance, the Allies managed to secure the beaches and push inland, eventually liberating Paris and advancing into Belgium. The end of the war. In the Pacific, American forces fought fierce battles to capture islands closer to Japan. They faced heavy resistance, but they continued their advance. By 1945, they were close enough to bomb Japan's cities. In Europe, Hitler launched one last offensive in the Ardennes, known as the Battle of the Bulge. But it failed. The Allies advanced into Germany from both the west and the east. In April 1945, Hitler realized all was lost and took his own life. Germany surrendered in May, ending the war in Europe. In the Pacific, the Americans captured Okinawa, the last island before Japan. To avoid a costly invasion of Japan, the U.S. decided to use a new weapon, the atomic bomb. In August 1945, the U.S. dropped atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrendered in September, bringing World War II to an end. Aftermath. After the war, Germany was divided among the Allied powers, and Japan was occupied by the U.S. The world was now dominated by two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, each with very different beliefs, setting the stage for a new kind of conflict, the Cold War.